Sawadee Krab. Welcome. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to those of you guys online. Welcome to everyone here at the temple. I'm starting today the Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. This is a 5-day course where I'm going to slowly help you to build up the foundational teachings of the Path to Enlightenment. You're going to be learning all the core and central teachings of the Buddha to really get started on the path. So welcome to you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. We've got a lot planned this morning, which we'll get into, but I like to start with meditation. That's typically how I start our classes, give you guys an opportunity to do some meditation and experience it. I will be teaching you meditation on tomorrow afternoon, but usually what we do is this morning, this afternoon, tomorrow morning, we do some meditation together, and then I'll actually teach it to you on Tuesday afternoon, give you guys a chance to experience it first before I start teaching it to you. The way that I do meditation is I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation, and I'm going to teach you these chants this afternoon after lunch. But if you'd like to see these chants, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You'll be able to see the chants that I do, and you guys are welcome to chant along. For those of you guys online, you can access these chants by going to our website of buddhadailywisdom.com, and from there click on free books, and you'll be able to see down towards the bottom there's the daily chanting sheet there. Even though I'm going to teach you this afternoon, I'll just give you a heads up that there's nothing mystical or magical about these chants. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So we don't need that anymore. We don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory, but it does help to kind of invigorate the mind and ease the mind into meditation, help you get more concentration and memory and focus on the breath, so you'll actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to learn chanting, you're welcome to chant along with me today, and this afternoon I'll be teaching it to you so you'll know how to actually do the chanting. Then after that, I'm going to provide you some guidance during the meditation where you'll hear me talking, and I'll be guiding you while we're actually meditating. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet, and we'll just all be meditating together. Everyone here and everyone online will just be meditating at the same time. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting as well. Just to give you guys a little bit of suggestions on your body positioning, there's 4 positions. You're going to learn all 4 of these in this course, which is seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. And most people are learning in the seated position to get started, so I'll give you some guidance there. But as I mentioned during the course, I'm going to teach you these other positions. So the seated position is either on the floor, in a chair. Some people sit on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair. Any place that you would like to sit, you're welcome to sit. There's not just one fixed position to meditate in. But if you're on the floor, oftentimes people like to sit with their legs lightly crossed with a cushion under their rear, because if your legs are real tight, it would impede the circulation, and you would like to allow that to flow, because otherwise it'll cause pain. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, which gets their hips up in the air and lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but not everyone's going to find the same thing to be comfortable. So there's other options as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees or their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. And this goes for anybody who's sitting in a chair, on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair. Same thing. Just find what's comfortable for you. Sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. And same thing with the hands and arms. Just put them wherever you're comfortable. But you can see me. I'm sitting in a chair with my legs crossed. So there's many options that you could use. It's just really whatever's comfortable for you. It'd be nice if your upper body is erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, your mind would tend to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, your mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like it to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back. Not only will this keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll help you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'll come back with some guidance to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami สวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone online as well. This was just a short, brief little meditation just to get you guys started. As we go throughout the week, you'll see that I'll elongate these longer and longer to give you guys more of a chance to build up your meditation practice. But in the morning on the first day, I usually just do a short little meditation just to kind of get you guys used to meditating and get into the swing of meditating each day. So again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see you guys here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to share with you the course and helping you understand the course. And then I'm going to be explaining to you the life story of Gotama Buddha. I'm going to be teaching you what is enlightenment. And then this afternoon, I'm going to be sharing with you Buddhist chanting. And then throughout the week, I'm going to be sharing different topics that are going to help you build up your foundation of the path to enlightenment. But before we even get started with any of those things, I'd like to share something with you that I typically share with brand new students when they're first getting started. It's important that you understand that what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're cultivating wisdom. There's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that is based in belief. You don't believe a bunch of things, then you hope something good happens when you die. Instead, when we talk about awakening to enlightenment, where this mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently, and you no longer experience any discontent feelings, the way that this is occurring is through you cultivating wisdom about what's called the natural laws of existence. The natural laws is what the Buddha described. He didn't give you a bunch of rules and commandments. He didn't give you certain beliefs to believe in and then hope something good happens when you die. He's not trying to guilt or shame or fear you into anything. He's not even trying to convince you to do anything whatsoever. The Buddha's mind is already peaceful and calm and serene and content with joy. He was just sharing with people of what it took for him to get to that enlightened mental state. And there are certain natural laws that the Buddha discovered that are affecting us, whether we're aware of it or not. And when we don't understand these natural laws, we will go out into the world, we will make unwise decisions, and we will experience unwholesome results. But when we make wise decisions, we will go out into the world and experience wholesome results. This is referred to as Gotama. You'll hear about this when we get to the different parts of our program, where you're going to learn about the natural law of Gotama, or some people call it karma. Karma is a Sanskrit version of this word, and Gotama is the Pali version. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so you're going to hear me using the word Gotama. What this means is cause and effect, or action and result. Anytime you make a decision, there's going to be some result. And when you're making unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome Gotama. And when you're making wise decisions, it's going to produce wholesome Gotama. And what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see is this natural law, so that as you learn gradually what this natural law is, you can navigate the world more readily. Because when you're angry and sad and frustrated, or you're having annoyment or irritation or any of these other discontent feelings like stress or anxiety or guilt or shame or fear, anything like that in the mind is struggling and having difficulties because it doesn't understand these natural laws. There's certain wisdom that the mind hasn't awoken to. So what you need to be able to do in a class like this and in a program like this is learn the teachings, investigate them, examine them, listen with eager ears so that you can understand what it is that I'm sharing with you. Because I'm sure that I'm going to share with you things that you haven't learned before, things that you haven't been exposed to before. And this is really good, because if you're in a classroom where everything the teacher says you already know, you're in the wrong classroom, because you're not growing and you're not developing. So there's surely going to be things that I teach that you haven't heard before, or your mind might even disagree with what I'm sharing. But in that situation, you would like to learn, you would like to understand, you would like to ask questions and get clarity. Then you would like to reflect on what it is that I'm sharing with you. If reflecting on it is to independently verify whether it's true or false. And as I go, I'm going to teach you how to do that, because that's what's going to help you get to wisdom. Is you can't just believe your way to enlightenment. You need to reflect on this and independently verify with what the Buddha is teaching you. Is it true or is it false? And then after you've learned and you've reflected, now you practice the teachings. You integrate them into your life and you start training your mind. The Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, that when you uproot these out of the mind, that's where the peace and the joy starts coming into the mind. So what we're talking about here is cultivating wisdom. And there's a process to doing that. Learning, reflecting to independently verify, and practicing. And then you'll know the truth about these natural laws and how your mind functions. You did the same exact thing with other natural laws, that when we were all born, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. And we struggled and we had difficulties with it. Just like these natural laws the Buddha is teaching us about, you might be struggling or having difficulties with these natural laws. When we first came into the world, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. So we fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbow, we might have broke open our knees, we might have broke toys and things like this. And we cried and we were upset because of the lack of wisdom that we had. But slowly but surely, as we aged, we gained wisdom of this natural law. And then we started making wiser decisions. We started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and so excited everywhere we went. We started paying attention to the things that we were doing and making wise decisions. If we had a certain thing that we were interested in keeping safe, we put it on a higher shelf or put it away where it wouldn't get broken, right? So we started making wiser decisions because we understood this natural law, not because there's any rules or commandments or anybody was forcing us to do anything. We just wisely understood this natural law, so we started making wiser decisions. One of the wiser decisions that I make is there's this cup of water that I have here that I choose to put it behind me, because I know that if I put it here, that I'm going to most likely knock it over, right? And then I have unwholesome results to deal with. Not because someone told me to do that, or not because someone forced me or controlled me or guilt or shamed me to do that. It's just a wise choice that I know the natural law of gravity, it doesn't make sense to put this glass of water here. It's wiser to put it back here. And because of that, I haven't spilt it. Right? So you start making wiser choices about the world. We're at the point now where we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on motorbikes, we can go on airplanes all across the world because we fully awoke to the wisdom of this natural law of gravity. And because of that, we now don't struggle with that natural law anymore. But there's natural laws that your mind is currently unaware of, that you are being affected by these natural laws, whether you're aware of them or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, we are affected by it, whether we are aware of it or not. So you're being affected by these natural laws that you don't realize and you don't have wisdom of. So the teachings of the Buddha are here to guide you in cultivating that wisdom. And it's important that you don't believe anything that's being shared, but instead you listen with eager ears to understand what's being shared. And then where you don't understand, you ask questions. Because you're not going to understand everything that I share with you. If you understood everything I share with you, you'd already be enlightened, right? You wouldn't be here, and you would have no need to be here. You wouldn't be experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and irritation and annoyance and all these other discontent feelings. So wherever you're hearing something that is different than what it is that you're currently understanding, that's an opportunity for growth by asking questions and understanding further. Okay, so this is what you're doing on this path to enlightenment, is you're learning, examining and investigating teachings now, and then you're reflecting on those teachings now to independently verify them, and then you're practicing the teachings now, and you're cultivating wisdom now, and because of that you experience the results now. This is the very unique thing about the teachings of the Buddha, that you're actually experiencing the results of learning and practicing them in this life, that you see the condition of the mind in the condition of your life gradually improving. As I mentioned, it's not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about learning now, reflecting now, practicing now, and seeing the results now in this life. Okay? So what I'm going to do is use some visual aids here to be able to help me explain to you our course and our program so that you guys can understand what it is I'm going to be sharing with you over the coming 5 days. And then we'll move into a topic of discussing the life story of Gotama Buddha. First, our class starts at 9 a.m. each day, and we finish up generally around 3 p.m., sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, and we tend to take about an hour and a half lunch, although that can be adjusted and fluctuated each day. As we go, I'd like to just share this contact information with you. This is the way to get in contact with me. If you're coming to class, great. You're welcome to come and you can learn here. If you're not coming to class, that's fine too. You don't need to let me know that you're not coming to class. This is more for after the program, that if for some reason in the future you would like to get in touch with me, you always have a way of getting in touch with me, because the next 5 days, while it's going to be really great and you're going to learn a lot, if you're really interested in getting to enlightenment, you're going to need continuous support from this point forward. So this is a way that you can contact me at any time about anything that you would like to contact me about. I'm here to help you and guide you on the path to enlightenment. And then in terms of the way our course is structured, of course, I just start out with a little bit of welcome and introducing you to the course. The way that it's structured is at 9 a.m. in the morning, we do chanting and meditation together. You'll kind of get in the flow of meditating each morning. So you'll kind of see the impact that that has to your mind over the next 5 days. And then you'll be able to keep with this as you go forward in your day-to-day life, that you're going to get the benefits of the teachings of the Buddha by integrating these into your life. So if you're starting to meditate here and then you continue to meditate beyond this course, that's where you're going to actually see all the benefits. Then around 9:30, I start talking about some aspect of the teachings. And each day the topic's going to be a bit different. Some people refer to this as a Dhamma talk, because the word Dhamma means teachings. So this is a talk about the teachings. And then we take a mid-morning break, usually somewhere around 10:30, 11, give you guys a chance to stretch and use the restroom, get some snacks and talk with each other, have a good time. Of course, anytime you guys would like to use the bathroom, it's right there. Feel free to use it. You can get up in the middle of class, go use the bathroom. There's bathrooms outside. You can go out to the parking lot and see the main bathrooms. There's signs that'll take you around to that. And there's even water and snacks and refreshments here that are provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to at any time. We do take a scheduled break, but you guys are welcome to take breaks anytime you like. It's your life and your decisions. You can manage that quite well. And then around 12 o'clock, again, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little bit later, we will take a lunch. And I'll let you know each day when we take a lunch when we're going to come back. And for those of you guys online, you might be in different time zones. So not only will I tell you the time, but I'll tell you, okay, we'll be back in 1 hour or an hour and a half or hour and 15 minutes or something like that. So that way we can all come back together and start learning again, generally around 1:30. But sometimes our time fluctuates depending on what's going on in our course. And then in the afternoon, I will teach you about meditation, and then we will do meditation together. Today, I'm going to teach you about chanting in the afternoon, and we'll do meditation together. Tomorrow, it's going to be meditation, and we'll do meditation. Wednesday, I'm going to teach you walking meditation. On Thursday, we have a special activity. So in the afternoon, we're going to be meditating as well, and you'll be learning about meditation. And then we generally finish around 3 o'clock. Again, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. It just all depends on how things are going in the course, but that's generally our program. And then on day 5, what I do is after teaching you for 4 days, I then invite you to a kind of a capstone where the last day I invite you to a tour outside the city where I take you to 2 different temples. There's a forest temple and there's a temple on top of a mountain where I tour you around so you can see the 2 different traditions of Buddhist teachings. So you're going to learn the teachings of the Buddha through the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism. And if you've never visited a temple with somebody that understands the teachings of the Buddha, this is a great opportunity for you, because when you see the temple, it's almost like the walls of the temple speak to you. The artwork will speak to you if you understand what they're trying to share, because these temples were built, many of them, over 500 to 1,000 years ago, and the artists were putting certain symbolism of the teachings of the Buddha, embedding it in the architecture and the artwork of the temple. And if you understand a bit of the teachings of the Buddha, which you will after 4 days of learning, we can go outside into these temples and I can show you around and help you to be able to understand the temples, so that then in the future, if you decide to visit a Buddhist temple, you'll be able to feel completely at home because you'll understand what it is that's going on at these Buddhist temples. So this is kind of like a classroom without walls, where we go around and I teach you as we're walking around. And we end up eating lunch at a Hill Tribe restaurant up on the mountain, and we do some other fun stuff. So I'll teach you guys about that and let you guys know more about it probably on Thursday, and then you can decide whether or not you'd like to come or not. And if anybody that you meet this week that would like to come to the tour, they're more than welcome, even if they didn't come to the class. So other people besides the students will come to these tours as well. So you're welcome to invite anybody and everybody that you like to either the course or to even this tour as well. So this is generally our schedule and our plan throughout the week. This entire course is based on this particular book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's volume 1 of this book series. The book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. I'm going to be walking you through chapters 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 19. So I'm not going to be teaching you all the chapters, but these are the foundational chapters in the book. There's other programs where I walk you through chapter by chapter of all the entire book, and that's a program that you guys might decide to move into, and it's actually restarting on October 20th, so you guys are actually learning here at a good time, because you can move into that program, and you can learn here at the temple, or you can learn online if you'd like. Depending on where you are in the world, you have opportunity to learn. So I'm going to walk you through these particular chapters, and you can get this book by downloading it for free from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can take it and go print it on your own if you like. If you like printed versions, you can get them here at the temple by just reimbursing us for the printing cost. Or if you have access to Amazon, you can get it from Amazon. They have it there as well, and you'll be able to get access to the printed version of this book. As I mentioned, it's the first volume of a 13-book book series, and it's helpful to acquire this book so that you can gradually read it. This is a book that you're going to most likely read multiple times. I've had students that have been studying with me for 5 or 6 years, and they've told me that they've read it probably 8 or 12 times, and each time they learn something new when they read this book. So it's really helpful to be able to have an access to this book, so you can gain access to it in all those different ways. So what I'm going to be teaching you and what you're going to be learning over the course of the next 5 days is, first, I'm going to teach you the life story of the Buddha. Because if you're interested in understanding the path to enlightenment, it's helpful to understand a bit about this person's life. So I'm going to share with you the life story of the Buddha. Then I'm going to teach you, after our break, what is enlightenment, because this is a certain goal that you're working towards on the path to enlightenment. And it's kind of like if you were headed to a new city and someone was like, hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai? Well, the first thing you're probably going to say is, well, what's in Chiang Rai? What's it like, right? So you'd like to kind of know a bit about it before you decide if you're interested in going on this journey. And then once you know about it, then you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you get there, you'll know that you're actually there. But if you didn't know anything about Chiang Rai, you wouldn't be able to have that. So I'm going to teach you about what enlightenment is, so you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then you'll actually know when you actually have arrived and the mind is actually enlightened. Then tomorrow morning, I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths, establishing right view. This is where you can have a breakthrough to understanding what it is that is the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In 4 simple statements, you're going to be able to understand what's causing your anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. Right now, you might think that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or agitated. But when you learn this teaching and you independently verify it, you'll be able to see the truth for yourself of what's causing these feelings, so that then you can actually eliminate them. You wouldn't be able to eliminate these feelings if you didn't know what was causing them. So that's what I'm going to teach you tomorrow morning, moving into the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into. If you're interested in getting to enlightenment, this is the path for all humans to enlightenment. You would need to know the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. You're going to need to revisit this teaching multiple times, but I'm going to introduce it to you and help you go into it in detail using the original words of the Buddha, so that you can see what it is that he taught and what it is that you need to learn and practice in order to transform your mind and get to this enlightened mental state. Then on Wednesday, I'm going to teach you guys what's called transforming the 3 poisons: craving, anger, and ignorance. This is where you're going to deepen your understanding of what it is that's causing the problem in the mind, and you're going to widen your understanding to understand more fully of what's actually going on in the unenlightened mind and why you keep experiencing the certain struggles and difficulties in day-to-day life. Then I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts, a householder's guide to daily practice. These are 5 impactful decisions that if you make them wisely, that you'll experience wholesome results. But if you make them unwisely, you'll experience unwholesome results. So I'm going to teach you guys this in detail as we get going on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, I'm going to teach you what is Karma and how does it affect me. This is the natural law that you're awakening to. And while we could say that everything that the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law, and everything that I'm teaching you anytime that you learn with me is about the natural law of Karma, on Thursday morning, we're going to go in and talk about this natural law specifically itself. So I'm going to explain to you all the different aspects of this natural law. Then also on Thursday morning, I'm going to teach you what is merit. This is an important teaching to understand and practice as part of your development on the path to enlightenment. And then I'm going to help you understand how to receive continued support on the path to enlightenment beyond this particular course, because there's more support for you to continue to go forward on your journey to enlightenment. And then as we go in the afternoons, I'm going to be teaching you breathing mindfulness meditation, and you're going to be experiencing this in the morning and the afternoon, getting a chance to build up your practice slowly but surely. I'm going to teach you the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions, so you'll know these and have them available to you, almost like tools in your tool belt. And then I'm going to teach you the Buddhist chanting as well, and help you guys to understand how to do that and why you would do it and what the history of Buddhist chanting is. Then I'm going to share with you how to integrate these teachings into your life, because it's wonderful to go to a course like this, but if you don't integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life, you're not going to be able to actually experience the benefits of the results. Sometimes people go away to courses or retreats like this, and then when they go back home, they just go back to what they were doing from the beginning, and they don't actually experience the real results. So if you're going to spend 5 days here learning and developing and training your mind, you would like to be able to integrate these teachings and techniques techniques into your day-to-day life so they can be very impactful for you, and you can experience transformation and improvement in your life. So that's what I'm going to be teaching you this on Thursday, is how to integrate the teachings into your life. So any questions on the course or what it is that you guys are going to be learning? No? Okay, for those of you guys online, you guys are welcome to ask questions as well. Let me just take a look here at Facebook and YouTube. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into this very first topic of discussion, which is where I share with you the life story of the Buddha. In the book that I shared with you, this chapter is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. And the reason why is because these were the motivators that encouraged the Buddha to go on this journey to enlightenment. Is he observed sickness, aging, and death, which you guys are going to hear about when I share this life story with you. This is going to help you to understand his journey, so that there are certain aspects of his journey that will help you in your journey to enlightenment. So I'm going to explain to you his life story, and then I'm going to highlight those things that will help you in your life. I've organized this talk into these sections where I'm going to talk about his birth, his early life, his journey to enlightenment, his teaching career, and then ultimately the motivators that motivated him to go on this journey to enlightenment, which is sickness, aging, and death. So the individual that we refer to as the Buddha or Gotama Buddha, he was born in 563 BCE. He was born in what we refer to as Nepal, but back then it wasn't referred to that way. It was just regions and different kingdoms and so forth and so on. And when he was born to a royal family. His mother was a queen. And as the standard practice during this time frame, that if you were pregnant and living with your husband, that when you were ready to deliver your baby, they would take you back to your homeland. So wherever your parents lived and your brothers and sisters lived, they would take you back to that part of the region of the kingdom, or wherever it is that you were from, perhaps a different kingdom, in order to deliver your baby, because then you would have people around you that could take care of you and your baby. So they organized a caravan for the queen to be able to take her back towards her homeland. And when she was going back towards her homeland in this caravan, she goes into labor, and she needs to stop the caravan and ask to get out. So she goes over to this tree, she holds on to the branch of the tree, and she's trying to deliver the baby in this position of standing up. And she's trying to get the baby out of the birthing canal, and the baby won't come out of the natural birthing canal. So it's born through the side of her stomach. And she ends up dying 7 days later. And this was not uncommon during this time frame, because we didn't have the medical technology to save her life at that point. Today, we would have just done a C-section if the baby couldn't come out, and it would have been just fine. But 2,500 years ago, they didn't have that particular technology. So she ends up dying 7 days later. And because death of a mother, and sometimes even children, at childbirth wasn't uncommon, they actually had certain cultural protocols in place of what they would do in these situations. And what they would do is, if you had siblings, your siblings would adopt your children as their own. So her older sister adopted Siddhartha Gotama as her own child. So essentially his aunt was his stepmother, and now he was raised by this person. It was said that during the lifetime of the Buddha, when he was born, that there was a miracle that occurred. I don't know that this is true, but it is in the original text. If you read the original teachings of the Buddha, they talk about after he came out from his mother's stomach, he walked 7 steps, lotus flowers were blossoming under his feet, and he said, "This will be my last birth." And I don't think this is actually true. It seems like it's an embellishment of the story, because if this part of the story was true, the next part wouldn't actually be needed. Sometimes when people do something amazing, like the Buddha, he already did something very amazing in his life. As time goes on, people embellish his story. You don't need to embellish the story of a Buddha. A Buddha has already done something very wonderful and very miraculous that you don't need to embellish it. So I think this is an embellishment of the story, because if so, this next part wouldn't be needed. As part of a practice that people would do during this time frame, his father, the king, decides to summon advisors to come and advise him what his son was going to become, because he was very interested to know what his son was going to do in life. And he summons 108 advisors. Essentially, these are fortune tellers that are going to tell him the future. And 107 of these advisors share with his father that your son's going to be a great leader and a great monarch, a great ruler. He's going to expand your territory far and wide. He's going to be this great, wonderful king. And of course, his father, that's my boy. All right. Yeah. Right. He really enjoyed hearing that. So there's this one advisor who comes in, the very last one, and he apologizes to the king. And he says, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I heard what the other advisors said to you, but your son is going to be a leader, but not in the way that you think. He's going to be a spiritual leader." And his father didn't like this. And his father decides to sequester his son into the palace and never let him go outside and get involved in worldly affairs. He thought that if his son went outside and got in worldly affairs, he would be interested in being a spiritual leader. So he decides to kind of woo him into the ways of being a monarch. He gives him wonderful entertainment, food, clothing, different fabrics that could clothe his body, beautiful women bathing him and taking care of him, riches and jewels, everything you can imagine that a king could give to their son. He did this because he thought that, okay, if he gets into this life of this luxury, he'll never give it up to go do anything else, because you can't live this kind of life if you're not a king. So for 29 years, Siddhartha Gotama lives this life of luxury, of experiencing all these things that his father was able to do for him. And at the age of 29, Siddhartha Gotama realizes that he's about to become the king. And realizes that he's never actually been outside the palace, because during this time frame you would become the king at the age of 30, and then your dad would retire, and then they would be there to help you to become a better and better king. So at the age of 30, at the age of 29, realizing that he was about to become the king at the age of 30, he decides to go outside the palace without his father realizing what he's actually doing. And he takes with him his royal attendant, or like his chief of staff. This is like his advisor, his chief confidant, right? And he goes outside the palace, and he has what's called the 4 observations. What the 4 observations are is he sees a sickly person, an aging person, a dead corpse, and he sees a roaming ascetic. And when he sees these things, they have an impact on him, that he sees things that he hasn't seen before. So when he sees the sickly person, he sees this disgruntledness, this agitation and frustration around that sickly person and their family. And he has to turn to his royal attendant and ask, "What's going on over there? Why are those people so angry and frustrated?" And his royal attendant's like, "Oh, that person's sick, and now they can't work, and they can't get food and clothing and things that they need, and they're having disgruntledness and frustration." And Siddhartha Gautama, this was all new to him, because he had never seen this before. He was living this life of luxury in the palace. So then he sees an aging person, this older, decrepit person, and essentially sees the same thing. He sees this disgruntledness and this agitation, and he has to ask his royal attendant, "What's going on over there?" And he's like, same thing. They can't get what they need. They're getting old and decrepit. They can't get food anymore. And they're agitated. They're annoyed. And Siddhartha Gautama realizes, this is what's happening to us as we get older. These are the kinds of things that are going to happen. And then he sees a dead body. And there's people that are angry and disgruntled and frustrated and sad and grieving. And again, he has to ask his royal attendant, "What's going on over there?" And he's like, "Oh, that's what happens to us when we die, or at the end of this life, we're going to die." And this was all new to Siddhartha Gautama. He didn't understand this fully. And he saw the disgruntledness that was going on there. And what he realizes is that the kingdom is full of misery and despair. That when he was in the palace, he was living this life of luxury, but when he comes out into the kingdom, he sees all this misery and grief and despair and frustration, which he hadn't seen before when he was in the palace. So then he sees the 4th thing. The 4th thing that he sees is this roaming ascetic, someone who's given up worldly life. They're meditating and trying to train their mind, and they're trying to figure out this sickness, aging, and death. And Siddhartha Gautama realizes that that's what he would like to do. He's not interested in ruling over this misery and this despair. He doesn't think that's going to help the people. So he decides to actually leave out of the royal palace and go off on this journey to be able to understand sickness, aging, and death, why this is occurring, and how to help people escape that frustration and agitation and annoyance that they're experiencing during these periods of time. So he goes back to the royal palace, and at this time he has a wife and he has a young child. And he understood enough that he felt like if he woke them up and said goodbye, he wouldn't be able to leave. So instead of waking them up and saying goodbye, he just kind of looks in on them while they're sleeping, and then he slowly makes his way out of the palace. And he takes with him his favorite horse, and he takes with him his royal attendant. And when he leaves, he eventually gets to the point where he turns his horse go, lets it go, and gives it to his royal attendant, and he lets his royal attendant go. He says, hey, you've been a great royal attendant. He lets the horse go and he just goes off on his own, but he first cuts off his hair. He has this really long, beautiful, flowing hair at this time, because this is how people knew you were part of the royal family, that you would grow your hair very, very long. Nowadays, if you're in the royal family, they'll just put your picture all over the kingdom or on the money and all these other kinds of things, and everyone knows who you are and that you're the member of the royal family, or you're the king or the queen or what have you. But during those times, they didn't have that. They didn't have photography and things like that. So the way that they would distinguish the royal family is the royal family would grow this really long, beautiful hair. Because all of us who are working in the fields and doing common jobs, we couldn't have that long, beautiful, flowing hair because it would get all knotted up. We didn't have the time to take care of it. It was only the royal family that could sit around in the life of luxury and have people taking care of their hair, detangling it, shampooing it, and these kinds of things. So if you went out into the kingdom with this long, beautiful, flowing hair, they knew right away you were a member of the royal family. So him cutting off this hair is like, I'm never going back. Because nobody would ever believe that he was the king, because he'd been growing this hair for 29 years, and there was no way that he would be able to grow that back in time frame for people to know that he was the actual king. So cutting it off was like, I'm never going back. I'm turning my life and I'm going in this new chapter of my life. It also accomplishes other things for you, which you'll learn about as part of the path to enlightenment, which is realizing non-self. Not everybody has to cut their hair in order to get to enlightenment, but it is one beneficial thing that someone might choose to do if they like. But during this time frame, the Buddha didn't necessarily understand that. So he cuts off his hair and he decides to go take up training with two individual teachers. First, one teacher for 1 year, and then another teacher after that for a second year. And when he's studying with these two teachers, they're teaching him to do things like hang himself upside down from trees, to lay on beds of nails, to starve his body, to pierce his body with metal implements, to starve himself. These people said that it was their teachings that lead to enlightenment, and they thought they were actually enlightened. And what the thought was is that if you could cause physical pain to the body and you could overcome that in the mind, that you would get to enlightenment. But Siddhartha Gotama studied these teachings with the first teacher for 1 year. And when he was studying these teachings for the first year, he got to the point at the end of that year where the teacher comes to him and says, hey, you've mastered my teachings. You're doing everything that I teach. You can now share my teachings. And Siddhartha Gotama realized that his mind wasn't any more peaceful or joyful than when he was in the palace. So now he gets frustrated and goes to a second teacher. And he goes to the second teacher. And this teacher was essentially teaching him the exact same things. And once again, this teacher comes to him and says, you've mastered my teachings. You can now share my teachings. And Siddhartha Gotama realizes that he's not any more peaceful or joyful than he was when he was in the palace. And he was frustrated with the whole thing because he's unenlightened, right? That for 2 years, it was almost like a waste of time. So he goes out into the forest and he goes off on his own, trying to figure out how to get to enlightenment. And he takes this ascetic practice of causing harm to the body as far as he could take it to try to see if it actually worked. He got to the point where he was only eating 1 grain of rice per day. And he was getting to the point where he was about to die. He was basically skin and bones. He was sitting on the edge of the forest and he was meditating. And there's a mother and a young child that come by and they see him with his bones protruding, his ribs, protruding, his facial bones protruding. He's just basically skin and bones. And they beg and they plead with him to eat some rice. And he reluctantly accepts this rice and starts eating it. And he realizes in this moment something that he hadn't understood before, that there's this middle way. That when he was in the palace, he was living this sensual pleasures and had everything and anything he ever wanted. But then when he came out of the royal palace, his mind swung all the way to the other side, where he was eating 1 grain of rice per day. And he realized that neither of those things lead to enlightenment. So he started now to practice what's called the middle way, where he started doing things in moderation. Instead of chasing and chasing and chasing, he would do things in moderation. So over the next 4 years, a total of 6 years, he ultimately figures out how to get to enlightenment. And his mind is peaceful and calm, serene, content with joy. The mind is focused. It has concentration and clarity. There's no discontent feelings. There's no anger or sadness or frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these discontent feelings and others are completely eliminated from the mind. The mind's focused and concentrated, has clarity of mind and deep memory. You can notice this as your mind's moving into this enlightened mental state. And he knows that what he figured out was vastly different than what anybody else was teaching at the time. So he ends up going to this tree, and he hangs out at this tree for about 7 weeks and trying to decide what he should do. Should he share his teachings with others, or should he go back to the royal palace? Right? Because he knew he was going to be facing an entire world that didn't understand the teachings that it took for him to be able to get to enlightenment. Well, we know the ending of the story, that he ultimately decided to share his teachings. He didn't go back to the royal palace. So by the age of 35, he's now enlightened. And he goes back to the area where he was originally learning with those first 2 teachers, and he encounters 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers. So a total of 5 people. These 4 classmates and this previous teacher, they see him coming, and he looks really bright. He looks very radiant. He's got meat on his bones. He looks healthy. He's smiling, probably, of course, right? And they see him coming, and they start mocking him. They start joking him. They start laughing at him. But by this time, it doesn't affect you, right? When you're enlightened and someone starts joking and mocking you, you're not upset by that. You're not frustrated. His mind was fully protected. So they thought that he had given up. They thought he had went back to the palace, because in their minds, to get to enlightenment, you had to be starving yourself. You had to be hanging yourself upside down from trees. So here they see this bright, healthy individual with a big smile on his face walking down the street. They thought that he had given up, because to them, he wasn't starving himself, so therefore he wasn't on the path to enlightenment. So what he does is he comes over to where they're at, and he sits down, and he touches the earth, and he performs the one and only miracle that he ever performed. And this miracle was that when he touched the earth, the animals came to where he was at. So deer and rabbits and squirrels and lizards and birds and all these different animals came to where he was at. And these 5 people, realizing that he had just performed a miracle, it got their attention. And he was like, okay, maybe we should listen to this guy. So they all sat down, and he shared with them the 4 Noble Truths, the very first teaching on the path to enlightenment. And this is where he explained the problem in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In 4 simple statements, he was able to help them be able to see what was causing their problems, and they were able to independently verify it. So from that point forward, more and more and more and more people started learning with him. And for the next 45 years, countless people get to enlightenment. So he ends up dying at the age of 80. And then his teachings were preserved in such a way that countless more people got to enlightenment after his death. So it was this sickness, aging, and death that ultimately led to the motivation to be able to go get to enlightenment, because he didn't understand why people were experiencing frustration and agitation. And what he ultimately just figures out is that because we're born, we experience sickness, aging, and death. It's inevitable that if there's birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death. And the reason why the mind is experiencing frustration and agitation is that the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting things to be permanent. That when you're experiencing sickness, the body wants to be healthy, or the mind wants to be healthy. The mind wants the body to be healthy. But this body is impermanent. It can't be permanently healthy. So as long as your mind is craving permanence, then if you're craving permanent health and now you experience this impermanence, your mind's going to be frustrated with that because you want permanent health and you're not getting what you want. And if you want to be permanently youthful and now you start aging, you're going to experience frustration and agitation. Or if you want permanent life and you want to exist in the world permanently, then when you're getting close to death, you will struggle with this. Right? So the mind is experiencing these discontent feelings because of what's called craving, desire, attachment. We're going to talk about this tomorrow when we discuss the Four Noble Truths. So the Buddha discovers that when you purify the mind of craving, desire, attachment, you no longer have any discontent feelings, that all the discontent feelings are eliminated. And not only that, but you won't experience rebirth. You won't come back into the world to experience sickness, aging, and death over and over and over again. Okay, so this is kind of the story of the Buddha and what he actually taught during his lifetime, just a little bit of it. And what I'm going to do is just open up to questions to see what you guys would like to ask, if anything at all, about his life story. You can ask questions here at the temple by using the microphones here. If you just press the gray button, the lights will come on and you can hold that up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple. They'll be able to hear you online. And for those of you guys online, you can put questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So do you guys have any questions here? Looks like Jack has a question.
Just a quick one. Did meditation already exist in that era? Was it a common practice already when Buddha went out?
Yeah, some of these things that the Buddha teaches were already being practiced during his lifetime and prior to him, but he brought a level of clarity and understanding to it that people didn't have. So they weren't practicing meditation exactly the way that he taught it. They were doing something that we would refer to as meditation. They even had a general understanding of the natural law of karma, but they didn't understand it to the level of clarity and the depth that the Buddha actually brought to it. So he refined what it is that it takes to be able to train your mind, and then he was able to teach it as one complete package of this is what you need in order to get to enlightenment. So some of these things existed, but they didn't understand them and how they worked to be able to actually get to enlightenment, and they weren't doing it in the way that the Buddha taught it. Okay. So I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. I'm just going to end this part of my talk by sharing with you that no one ever said that life would be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough. Learning Gotama Buddha's teachings, it's not easy, but learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that life is not tough. Because in the unenlightened state, life can feel quite miserable sometimes. While we look at the positive side, and that's really wise to look at the positive side of life, it can feel quite miserable sometimes when you're experiencing frustration and agitation and annoyment and guilt and shame and fear and some of these other discontent feelings. Life can feel quite miserable. And life is not easy in the unenlightened state, but it's also not supposed to be tough either. Oftentimes we make life more difficult for us. So by learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha, it's not easy to learn and practice his teachings. It's a challenge. But by meeting that challenge, you'll ensure your life is not tough. Because what we tend to do in the unenlightened state is when we meet with a certain challenge, we will tend to run away from that. But that just ensures that this issue will continue. Because the only reason why an individual struggles in life is because they lack wisdom. They lack wisdom of that particular situation and how to overcome it. So the mind is actually struggling. So if you run away from the challenges that you face in life, you're going to ensure that those challenges continue to exist over and over and over again because you never cultivated the wisdom to overcome that challenge. But when you face the challenge, when you turn around and you walk towards it and you provide yourself an opportunity to cultivate wisdom, now you can overcome it. Because the next time that particular thing is occurring in your life, you can actually just apply your wisdom and you can overcome that challenge really easily. So while walking on the path to enlightenment is challenge and sometimes even a struggle, it's wise to not shrink back from that struggle. Don't run away from that struggle, but instead turn around and walk towards it. And now you have support to be able to help you. For someone who's overcome all these struggles, you can reach out and I will help you to understand how to overcome whatever challenge it is. And it's just a matter of helping you cultivate wisdom in a way that you can learn, reflect, independently verify, and practice. And then slowly but surely, as you gain more and more wisdom, you'll see the improvement to the condition of the mind in the condition of your life as well. Okay, so this is everything that I have to share with you right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a break to give you guys a chance to talk to each other, stretch your legs, use the bathroom, get a snack if you like. There's a 7-Eleven down the street. If you go out the front gate of the temple and turn right, there's plenty of restaurants and shops where you can get drinks and refreshments and things like that. It's not hard to find food in Thailand, as you guys have seen, right? It's not really difficult at all. It's everywhere. So right now it's 10:15. Why don't we take a good 20-minute break, which will bring us back at essentially 10:35 and give you guys a chance to meet with each other and spend time, and then we'll start over at 10:35. Okay, so thank you guys for your time and your attention, and we'll see you guys after break. Okay.